This is Marc Paragas, and this is my weather case study presentation on Cubana de Aviación 9046. It was a Sunday evening, September 3rd, 1989, when an Aviación IL 62M registration Charlie Uniform Tango 1281 operated by Cubana de Aviación began to taxi out. Piloted by Captain Arnando Olive Ros Arguelles and Miguel Ruiz Ravelo, with navigator Thomas Estrada Garcia. It was scheduled to depart from Havana Jose Marti International Airport, Cuba, and was cleared to depart from runway 05. Now, let's set the stage. The flight was chartered, operated by Cubana de Aviación from Havana, Cuba to Milan, Italy, with a technical stop in Cologne, Germany. The weather was very poor, with the accident investigation stating that during the taxiing along the island, the captain gave instructions for takeoff with turbulence, delaying the movement of the aircraft. Ship to give time for cumulus nimbus to vent, a low angle climb with the aim of gaining speed quickly. The aircrew were not very aware of the brutal conditions, and so they decided to take off regardless of what they knew. The aircraft started to depart from runway 05 and takeoff commenced at 22:56. The weather at this point was brutal, with torrential rain, thunderstorms, and a strong wind shear at low altitudes. The tower reported wind at 050 at 14 knots, gusting to 23 knots, visibility 500 meters, and storm over station 7-6, overcast at 540 to 600 meters. It was during the initial ascent that they reduced flaps from 30% to 15%, and also that they encountered the brutal wind shear and weather. This was when they started to get that tailwind and started to lose airspeed. Soon after, they began to descend. A minute and 7 seconds after takeoff, the aircraft made contact with the ground. With the gear up, the right wing destroyed the ILS localizers of runway 23, the fuselage leaving a furrow in the ground. The aircraft then collided with the slope and concrete base of the fence bordering the end of runway 23. So right around here, you can see it right around here where my mouse is. Collided with the slope and concrete base of the fence bordering runway 23. Falling 200 meters outside the airport onto a neighboring farmhouse. You can see where the crash location is beyond this highway and probably right into the residential farmhouse area. This only took a minute, and all 126 souls perished, with another 24 fatalities from the ground. Now, let's look at the weather and why this happened, because this is primarily caused due to weather. That was what the incident report ended up saying. According to the report, there was a rapid change in the weather minutes prior to the aircraft taking off. With established meteorological information, historical data that shows that there has been a gradual change in weather due to storm previously, also finding that there is a, quote, decrease in the values of altimetric pressure until the time of the observation, which coincides with the time of the accident, where a sharp increase occurs according to the graphs, end quote. This is taken from the investigation report. This is backed up by a testimony from a witness, a resident in the vicinity of the airport, and also a meteorologist specialist, where he says that, quote, after the storm became more intense and the ceilings of the cumulus clouds were between 500 and 1,000 meters approximately, Visibility oscillated between 1 and 2 miles, and the wind was light, estimating its speed between 20 and 25 knots and direction too variable. At this moment of the crash, he saw that the base of the clouds suddenly reddened from his position to the right of the airport, and that a reddish flame rose in the form of a monkey. And that at that time, and for about 5 to 10 minutes afterwards, the rain was so heavy that it flooded the area around their house. End quote. This is eyewitness information taken from the investigation, and this is from the included in the investigation report. And this witness was on the balcony of his apartment when he saw all this happen. Now, I think it's fair to say that the incident was primarily caused by a microburst, where the performance was heavily affected through wind shear, causing the airplane to lose a large amount of airspeed. Now, as for responsibility, I think the responsibility lies mostly with the pilot in charge. Although there is an argument to be made with the lack of great forecasting of wind shear conditions, the decision to fly is on that pilot, and the decision to take off in that time that he did doomed that flight. Now, the similar accidents could be prevented through the use of more accurate and better wind shear and warning weather systems at airports. This, coupled with better training on real-time weather identification for pilots, as well as better training on handling wind shear, would be great ways to deter incidents like this. The investigation report at the end, the safety recommendations actually agree with me on this. Now, there were no changes in the aviation safety regulations due to this incident. And we could see here exactly this is basically exactly what happened. Now, of course, initially the takeoff appeared normal, and then once they started to ascend, they encountered the wind shear and the tailwind, and that resulted in the airspeed decreasing in airspeed. And now training usually the training at the time, they actually, according to the investigation report, they initially did not think that the weather was that impactful, and that they said that they would because according to their communications, they said that they were to stay on course, as in they weren't going to decrease or increase or change any of their attitude or pitch. But of course, they started to lose airspeed, and then they realized that they needed to they realized that they started to increase their airspeed by lowering their pitch, and that of course meant that they were on a downward glide slope, and with the terrain incoming, they did not have enough airspeed to avoid the terrain, and ended up crashing into the field over here. Now, one way to avoid this accident happening is to postpone the flight. The meteorologist eyewitness actually reported that 15 to 20 minutes after the incident, the weather gradually began to improve. Another way to avoid this incident is to try and maintain or increase the pitch attitude and accept the decreased airspeed on takeoff. Now, we are trained to decrease or reduce pitch attitude to regain lost airspeed, but in situations encountering wind shear, it is necessary to prevent a downward flight path. Potentially encountering terrain. Now, this is taken straight from the Aviation Weather Handbook in Chapter 22 regarding thunderstorms, and this visual is also taken from there as well. Now, this is an unfortunate incident that is not covered by a lot of media, with the only report or source being the accident investigation, which is unfortunately not in English. And also, I don't speak Spanish, which makes it pretty difficult to gather the information. With a large cause of the incident being pilot error, there weren't many actions taken post-incident in terms of regulations or safeguards. Now, I've already told you about the safety recommendations and how they speak of improving meteorological services throughout the airport and increasing training on how to on what to do when encountering wind shear, and I completely agree. Now, these are important things that need to happen so that we can prevent future incidents like this. And this definitely shows the dangers. This incident definitely shows the dangers of weather and how, as pilots, we need to make real-time decisions and be constantly vigilant and aware of all conditions of flight.